Hello, thank you for joining us tonight. I know your time is really valuable, so I want to go ahead and get started. I know I've spent time on many webinars in the past only to drive myself nuts because at the end of the webinar, you really don't get any real information and you feel like you just wasted your time. And so I want to make sure that we stay on track. And you know that this webinar is going to be worth your time. You're going to walk away with some information that you can apply right away. Bree, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. How about everyone else?
Okay, good. If you guys can hear me okay, if you guys can just raise your hand so Bree can, or chat her up in the chat box and let her know that she can hear you okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Anna Doxey. I'm the founder and director of the Institute of Holistic Phytoaromatherapy. And I decided to give this webinar because this time of year is stressful. And so life in general just moves very fast. And, you know, with advanced technology in the communication field, you know, with texting and all of the advances, it just puts an added pressure for us to respond faster, for us to deliver more. And as we age, demands and expectations from others, or sometimes even just expectations that we put on ourselves, become higher. So we have these higher expectations to produce more, or to give more, or to take care of more. And yet the days seem to be much shorter. You know, we can only cram in so much in 24 hours. I know when I was younger, a year seemed like forever. And now a year feels like just a few months have passed. And so everyone is under a lot of pressure. And so pressure in turn, it creates stress in our life, and stress results in various imbalances within our body systems, and imbalances then manifest as a lack of homeostasis in our bodies. A lack of homeostasis is the source of all disease. So we really need to slow down and pay attention to our bodies and what our bodies are trying to tell us. So on the topic of self-care, I know for myself, maybe many of you can relate, but as a mother of 6 and being self-employed, I mean, I'm sure most of you know better than to have 6 kids, but just in general, as a mother, even just with one child, we're accustomed to putting the needs of others first. And it's usually our children, you know, ahead of our own needs. And maybe it's, we don't have children. Maybe we put our work responsibilities first. We have to pay the bills, right? And so that often means that we take care of ourselves last, and sometimes maybe not at all. So again, when this happens, it begins to manifest in our bodies. It manifests in us physically, it manifests emotionally and mentally. And again, we start seeing imbalances. And without even knowing it, disease takes root within a body system, and we don't even know. And so we're so busy with keeping up with day-to-day demands, taking care of others, and often neglecting self-care. And so, again, we need to slow down, pay attention to the signals our body is giving us, and not ignore those signals. Really being in touch with changes that are taking place in our body and what that could possibly mean. Self-care is not selfish. I know a lot of parents, and you know, including myself for many years, especially as a mother, again, you feel like you're being selfish if you take care of yourself first. But I have to say, you cannot meet the daily demands and care for others properly if we don't care for ourselves first. So put the guilt away in that department, because if you want to be a better mother, practice self-care. If you want to be a better wife, practice self-care. If you want to produce more and be more effective at your job or your business, you need to practice self-care. If you're not the best that you can be, you cannot be the best at anything else in your life. So it's really something that we need to think about and then plan ahead for, create a plan of action, and then actually put that plan of action into force. So I thought, that this webinar would be beneficial, and it will come with many good reminders. It'll probably introduce you to a few things, especially because this is a stressful time of year. So tonight we're going to talk about just that. And what first attracted me to aromatherapy and essential oils was stress and anxiety. I was just so intrigued with how something so natural that smelled so good could be effective. And so we'll talk about essential oils, we'll talk about aromatherapy tonight, but we'll dig just a little bit deeper, and we're going to take a more complete and holistic approach to self-care. And we're going to talk about pairing essential oils and aromatherapy with other things like vitamins, herbal adaptogens, minerals, and of course, food and diet, which should never be neglected to effectively practice self-care so that we can actually see results in the overall quality of our health. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get the webinar started. I'm wearing a new headset tonight, so it just sounds a little awkward for me. I'll have to get used to this. Okay, how to practice self-care in times of trauma and stress and trauma. So what are ways that stress and trauma affect our body? So when we look at this picture, we see a lot of ways. We become exhausted, we have anxiety, low energy. Then there's things we can't see, like internal inflammation happening in our body. Our sleep is not always the best. In fact, we might suffer from insomnia. It may spike our cortisol at the wrong time, which also affects our sleep, or ruin our circadian rhythm, which also affects the quality of our sleep. And so these things that we see here, of course, the biggest one in the middle, adrenal fatigue. So all of these things from stress and trauma, like say the side effects of stress and trauma, are actually affecting our body internally. And so the biggest one in the middle, adrenal fatigue, is also a huge issue for this country. And it means hypo, which means lower. And so basically what it is, it's a low functioning or a deficiency in the function of our adrenals. So adrenal fatigue is a stress condition, and the adrenal glands become chronically fatigued, and in turn, they become dysfunctional or low functioning. And so it can affect us physically, it can affect us emotionally, psychologically, and it can come from many triggers. It can come from something maybe attacking our health physically, or stress put on ourselves physically, like maybe you lifted too heavy at the gym, or maybe you broke something, or maybe you had surgery. Or it could be from emotional stress, like maybe a loss of a job or a death of a loved one. It could be something psychological, or even something in our environment. Environmental stress can also cause our imbalances in our body and cause stress in our body. And so it could be one of these things, or it could be a unique combination of these. And I don't want to ignore also, it could also be something infectious. Like if you have a MRSA or a bacterial infection or any type of sickness, it's going to put stress on your body, excuse me, and in turn create these imbalances. And so basically what happens is when the demand of the stress is higher than the ability of your adrenal glands to recover from that stress, that's when the fatigue occurs. That's when it becomes low functioning. And then the imbalances take place. And if it goes in an imbalance for too long, that's when disease can set in. So getting control of stress and properly managing our adrenal health is really not an option, because it can lead to things that are in turn very serious. So what exactly is the function of our adrenals and where are they located? So our adrenal glands sit above our kidneys. As you see in the illustration there, they're so tiny. They're tiny, but they are powerful. And they're actually two separate glands. They're two separate glands as part of the endocrine system that act together. And they actually produce, regulate, and disperse our hormones. So a dysfunctional adrenal gland will result in a hormonal imbalance. And again, as mentioned at the outset, a lack of homeostasis or balance is the beginning of all disease. So it's important to listen to our body, look at the signals that it's telling us so that we can make changes and avoid the beginning of disease. And it's not just the beginning of disease, it affects the quality of our life, which we'll get into. So that maybe if you suffer from this, you will know. I was just looking at someone on Facebook who said, I just had a baby, I broke out in a rash and on my chest out of nowhere, and I don't know what's going on. And then everybody's offering their suggestions. Oh, put rose water on it. Oh, put lanolin on it. Oh, do this and do that. And I'm like, all these things are great ideas, but if you don't get to the source of the problem, it's just gonna start happening. So when I say we're going to take a more holistic approach, we're not going to look at just catering to the symptoms, covering up the symptoms, or trying to abate the symptoms. We want to get to the source of the problem. There was even an acupuncturist, and she's like, oh, she has a kidney qi deficiency. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but why does she have the deficiency? Where does it start? We need to get to the source. And so again, that went back to our adrenals. So how stress and trauma affect our hormones? So we have these hormones mentioned here that our body produces: cortisol, progesterone, testosterone, adrenaline. You can see them there. The epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, it responds to our fight or flight. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. Cortisol, the stress hormone, it controls a lot of things like the regulation of our blood sugar. It has a lot to do with how, inflammation in our body, how our body responds when we're sick to an illness, immune response. And so it has a lot of important functions, not just with managing and meeting the demands of our stress. But our adrenals, they are our main center for producing energy in our body. So if you're going to have problems with your adrenals, you're going to notice a difference in your energy level. Then we have the aldosterone, which regulates our sodium, potassium, and fluid intake, so our electrolytes. That has a lot to do with how we recover on a daily basis, especially if we're an athlete, especially if we work out at the gym or we have very active lifestyles. We can't function without an appropriate electrolyte balance. Then we have the DHEA, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, our sex hormones. They act as antioxidants. tissue repair, balancing our sex drive, and our cortisone, as well as other anti-aging and antioxidant type functions. And of course, we all want to age as slowly as possible. And so antioxidant function is important. So hormonal balance is key to wellness. And so we want to, again, catch issues with stress, with trauma that lead to stress on our adrenals early on. Bree, I just want to do a little sound check and make sure you're still hearing me okay.
Still hearing you fine.
Awesome. So again, why does it affect us? Our hormones actually help us maintain homeostasis, and it affects all of our other physiological responses. So even more than our adrenals. And so it's very important that we keep them in balance. Our energy levels. So adrenaline fatigue, adrenal, you see how they're related. Again, it's our core energy producers. And again, it manages our blood sugar. Have you ever woken up in the morning with low blood sugar? That means you're going to have low energy. If you have problems with being alert, you will have problems with adapting to the stress that you may be handling. It's going to affect your sex drive, sensitive topic, right? But, I have so many women coming to me, asking me, and, what is wrong with me? There's no problem in my relationship. Why, is my sex drive so low? Well, it has to do with your hormone balance, and it has to do with adrenal issues. And so it's very important to pay attention to that if you're struggling in that area, and maintaining an appropriate balance of minerals within our body. So if we look at some of the hormones one by one, we'll take a little bit of a look at cortisol. And again, our blood sugar. So if you're having issues with stress or trauma, do you notice fluctuations in your blood sugar? Because if you're really in tune with your body, I know when I have low blood sugar, I know when I have high blood sugar, I know when my body starts doing things, oh my goodness, my blood sugar is high or my blood sugar is low. You really have to pay attention and be in tune with your body and to the signals that it is showing you. You don't want your immune system to be suppressed. Cortisol also aids in proper function of your metabolism and how your body processes fats and proteins and carbohydrates. So when we eat, we need our metabolism to process our fats, our proteins, and carbohydrates in a way that will allow us to effectively burn them and use them as energy instead of storing them in our body. It will also affect our ability to heal. If we're having issues with stress or trauma, and we have surgery or we hurt ourselves, we're not going to heal as well. Our bones will not heal as quickly. Our collagen production will be affected, which will in turn affect how your body heals, especially damage that's been done to the integumentary system. And so it also controls amino acid balance, electrolyte balance, short-term memory recall, sleep cycle, and just overall mood. So cortisol is extremely important, and we really can't take that for granted. So when it's elevated, our body goes into a state called proteolysis. And this is not a state we want our body to be in, because it's kind of like an immune disorder where the body starts to attack itself. So it actually kind of starts cannibalizing itself. So when you're in a state of proteolysis, it breaks down your muscle and it leads to muscle loss. So maybe you've been going to the gym a lot and you've been lifting and you haven't seen any results. or maybe you notice you're just losing muscle or becoming more flabby despite the fact that you're very active. Well, that may have something to do with your cortisol level. And so that's something you're going to want to get checked out. And I will give you a series of tests and things that you may want to discuss with your doctor. But in the long run, if your body is breaking down muscle instead of building muscle, it's going to ruin your overall metabolism, which means you're going to gain weight. So you may notice if your cortisol levels are up that you are gaining weight. And sometimes it's really steady. Like you just get on the scale and it's like a half pound every day and you haven't changed a thing. It's just really out of whack, out of balance. So we'll talk about more. So stress is a huge concern for all of us, obviously, and 75 to 90% of doctors' visits are related to stress, and that came from the CDC. And a lot of people are walking around suffering from adrenal fatigue, and they don't realize that there's actually a name for it and that it's not something that they have to live with. They don't have to just accept that they're feeling this way, that they could actually do something about it. They could actually practice self-care and see improvement. You don't have to accept it as this is just something I'm going to have to live with. And so are you at risk for this? Do you feel like you get enough relaxation? Are you a perfectionist? Because they tend to push themselves harder and, overwork themselves. Do you feel trapped in an unhappy situation, maybe whether it be a job or a relationship or something else? Do you stay overwhelmed for extended period of time? Or do you have a prolonged illness? Or does a family member that you're close to have a prolonged illness? Or are you a caretaker of someone, whether it's your job or a loved one? Are you a caretaker with someone with a prolonged illness? Because these things put you at risk for adrenal fatigue because they do cause extended periods of stress. And seeing a loved one sick can be quite traumatic. Oops, excuse me. So habits that exasperate stress are not getting enough sleep, choosing poor fueling options for your body. I know it's basic, but people think food is just for an enjoyment, and you need to be taking every meal seriously, using it as an opportunity to fuel your body to the best of its ability. Do you have reoccurring infections, asthma, bronchitis, allergies? Do you use coffee or energy drinks to get your day started? I mean, you shouldn't need to do that if you're taking care of your adrenals and practicing self-care. Do you work past fatigue? I know this is a busy season for some, and so this is their big money-making season, and so they push themselves at working long hours, and they're fatigued and they should stop. And so you have to look at yourself, look at your job, look at your lifestyle, and see if you're actually doing things that are exasperating and causing more stress in your life. So that you can fix those things. And here's a few other things. I mean, financial challenges, a death of a loved one, not exercising, just having a stagnant lifestyle, anything long-term of stress, anxiety, that causes depression or fear will wreak havoc on your adrenals. And then you will have that lack of homeostasis. And then that is leaving an open door for disease to set place in your body. So stress is overlooked, I think, because it's just so common. As far as adrenal fatigue is concerned, typical Western medical doctors don't actually see adrenal fatigue is real because there's no pharmaceutical drug that can fix it. There's really no way to capitalize off of it because the way to fix it is self-care. It's by fueling your body properly, taking appropriate vitamins and minerals and herbs and using things like essential oils and aromatherapy that will actually bring your body back to homeostasis. So you can't necessarily go there saying, oh, I think I have adrenal fatigue, because they're going to look at you like it's all in your head type thing, you know, depending on your doctor, not all of them, but most. So you have to choose your doctor wisely and maybe work with more of like a naturopath or an experienced aromatherapist or phytotherapist or herbalist who's aware of how to help you and help your body regain homeostasis. So when you go to your doctor, you kind of have to be educated in advance, recognize, okay, I think this is my issue. I see myself in a lot of the symptoms, which we'll go over. And instead of going, hey, I think I have adrenal fatigue, you can go in and say, I would, you know, I've been under a lot of stress, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I'm going through. I'd like to have a saliva hormone test. I'd like to get my DHEAS levels test. I'd like to get a urine test, blood test, my cortisol, you know, level tested. And it's not one of these things. It's the result from the combination of these tests that will help identify your body going through this type of fatigue. So you can look for, obviously, fatigue. You can look for allergies, like my friend on Facebook that just had the baby, these weird breakouts or hives out of nowhere. I know when I personally suffered through a really bad bout of adrenal fatigue, I had hives all over my body. So you might have these new or unexplained allergies that you've never had before. You might have insomnia. You might have that fluctuation of blood sugar levels. I encourage everybody to go buy one of those cheap little monitoring kits and test your blood and get to know, you know, how you feel when your blood sugar is at certain levels so that you can be aware of what's causing an issue. You might have anxiety or panic attacks. You might have a horrible memory. Muscular pain, or like fibromyalgia, just all over type body pain. You might feel depressed. These things here mentioned on the slide, these are things and symptoms that you're looking for, whether it be a few or many. A combination of these things is a clue, along with the results from your tests that I mentioned, that you could be suffering from adrenal fatigue. And so this is a time that says you need to slow down and practice some self-care. So the best support for stress and trauma is adaptogens. So what is an adaptogen? That term was coined way back in the 40s by Dr. Lazarev, who was a Russian scientist. And so basically an adaptogen is something, and here we're talking about plant adaptogens because we want natural adaptogens. It's a substance that normalizes or modulates a biochemical process or tissue function within our body. So if something is functioning too high, it will bring it down. If it's functioning too low, it will bring it up. But what it does is it takes the high or the low and it meets it where it's at and it balances it out. So for example, if you write a check for $1,000 and you only have $500 in your bank account, there's going to be a deficit and somebody needs to go in and make a deposit to meet that $1,000 requirement in order for that check to be paid. That is what an adaptogen does. It makes a deposit in your hormone account, so to speak, to balance or offset the deficit that is there so that you can function or your body can function and have normal physiological processes. And so again, whether it's high or low, it will fix that. So what it also does is it avoids your body when it's about to reach collapse, because if no one goes in and adds that check into the bank, that check is not, that deposit into the bank, that check is not going to clear. If you go too long without having your, your adrenals balanced, and those requirements being met, your body's going to reach a point of collapse and you're going to find yourself bedridden. And I know because I've seen other people do it. I have personally experienced it, and it could recover in a short period of time, and it could go on for several months. It really depends on how astute you are to paying attention to your body and taking the appropriate self-care to make sure that you are regaining balance in your life. So in order to qualify as an adaptogen, this substance has to be non-toxic, right? Because toxins just put more stress on our body, not less stress. And therefore, it has to be non-toxic. It has to, again, produce a certain physiological effect, or it has to change your chemistry. And then it has to normalize a physiological process, normalize, balance, create homeostasis, all the same thing. So how can phytotherapy help? There's all kinds of things that you could do. We have herbal adaptogens. We have essential oil adaptogens. We have our diet. We have essential fatty acids. We have vitamins. And a combination of all 5 is going to be the best way to create homeostasis within your body system. Sure, you could start with one, it will help, but if you really want to see the best results, you're going to have to do a combination of all 5. So let's start with our diet, because that's the first thing that we should always focus on. And it's also the thing that people want to focus on the least, because that takes discipline, and nobody wants to be disciplined when it comes to food. I know my husband, he feels like he works very hard, and he does, and he doesn't want anybody telling him what he should eat at the end of the day. He just wants to come home, relax, and eat something good. But we have to pay attention to what we're eating. We have to make sure the foods that we're eating are low glycemic. We have to make sure that the majority of our food is alkaline. And that's a really sensitive area for many, because I think most of America eats meat, and meat is acidic. And I'm not telling you to go out and be vegan or vegetarian or anything like that. That's a personal choice. What I'm saying is you should at least be committed enough to make sure the majority of your food is plant-based and alkaline. And if you need to get protein through meat sources, it should be an accessory and not your mainstay, and so high amounts of lean protein. We lose muscle yearly as we age, period. We lose about 2% muscle every year. So if you're not doing anything to maintain or gain muscle, you are guaranteed losing muscle. It's just a part of aging. So you need to be eating, depending on your weight, 75 to 100 grams of protein a day, whether it's plant-based or coming from another source or a combination of the two. And if you're trying to gain muscle, you're going to have to eat even more, about 1 gram per body weight. And that's a lot. And that requires planning, especially if you want most of it to come from a plant-based source. But whatever it is, make sure it's lean. and make sure you're getting enough for your body. You need to keep your fluids, your water, your herbal teas up. And that has to take conscious effort. You have to make sure when you go to work or to the gym or wherever you're going throughout the day that you have that fluid, whatever your choice is, with you. Again, this takes planning. You can't just do this off the cuff. Self-care takes planning. You want to try and do more vegetable juices instead of fruit juices. I like to juice a lot, and I make sure that most of my juice is green. That doesn't mean that it's not sweet, but I don't do a lot of fruits and sweets because that is going to really throw off your blood sugar level and your cortisol. If you want to do milks, I encourage people to look at plant-based milks. Oh my God, there are so many good plant-based milks that taste absolutely amazing. There's no reason to go and drink milk from a cow because we're not cows when there's so many different plant-based milks that taste so good. I love hemp milk and I love coconut milk, but there's so many more, soy, almond, cashew. I mean, there's so many, and you just have to be willing to try them something new and make a conscious decision, that you're going to do something healthy, for yourself. When you have healthy, you need a healthy balance of complex carbohydrates and veggies with that lean protein. Sometimes, you might want to go into weight loss mode. So you do a lot of lean protein and veggies, and that's great for a short period of time, but you need to work the carbohydrates back in at some point. Healthy carbohydrates. I'm not talking like gluten-based, carbohydrates or carbohydrates that aren't low glycemic. So you want to, again, take the time to plan ahead for self-care in this area of food. So you want to avoid things like sugar, the obvious, soda, candy, cookies, refined flours, coffee and other stimulants. The list goes on, especially things that you're allergic to, or even salt, the type of salt that you choose. I mean, prepackaged foods have tons of sodium. It's best to eat, it's best to eat not, freshly made food, not prepackaged, food. That's hard to do when you're busy, but that takes planning ahead where you can cook your meals 1, 2, or 3 days in advance and put them in separate little trays and seal them or freeze them so that you can take them with you. Again, self-care does not mean there's no effort. It takes a lot of work. But back to the salt, Himalayan salt and sea salt, even choosing the type of salt we choose to put in our body makes a big difference, especially for people who have high blood sugar or certain disorders or health challenges. So vitamins and minerals, we have vitamin C, vitamin E, B complex, magnesium, and calcium. These things go a long way to help keep our adrenals balanced. So our vitamin and mineral content is important. I like to take a whole food multivitamin. And so that's something that you may want to look into. I do like a woman's one a day over 40 type thing because, I don't like to take a lot of supplements, but you can't skip a multivitamin, and it should be whole food. And, it has like probiotics and all kinds of greens and things in it. And so it's great for your overall self-care regimen. Essential fatty acids for stress and trauma, that cannot be ignored. It really can't. Omegas play an important part in your heart health. They play an important role in managing our blood pressure and how we respond to stress, just like cortisol. And they have a huge effect on our mood and our memory and our brain function. I have chosen to never live without omegas. Most people get too many 6s and 9s. It's really the 3s where we're deficient. And so if you want to have a healthy nervous system and keep your inflammation, systemic inflammation low, and really support your brain and nerve health, you're going to have to bring in omegas. I like plant-based omegas, but there's fish sources of omegas, but the quality of your omegas makes a difference. Whether you take, an oil omega supplement, or whether you add more flaxseed or chia seed or things like that into your diet is up to you, but by all means, do something. Again, we just talked about that, but omegas do have a lot to do with producing serotonin and dopamine. Those are our feel-good hormones. And so we want to feel good on a daily basis. We need that to manage stress and to keep our inflammation in our body down. If you have issues or challenges with your integumentary system, like eczema or psoriasis or other concerns, your omegas are key in helping that. You also can look into acetyl L-carnitine and CoQ10. They help with healthy metabolism. They help with keeping our cardiovascular system in tune. They help with keeping our energy levels high and fighting inflammation. And you also want to consider a probiotic to support digestion. Again, you can get omegas from flax, hemp seeds, chia seeds, or you can just buy a liquid omega supplement. So what about essential oils? Are they adaptogenic? Yes, many are, not all of them. And so essential oils that can sedate or that can stimulate, again, the adaptogenic effect is the balancing effect. So does your body need to be sedated at this time, or does it need to be stimulated? It can modulate. We do have essential oil adaptogens that can modulate our systems, our physiological processes, and have modulating capabilities. So they balance, they modulate, and they help and support us through, times of stress and trauma. How is it possible? Well, essential oils, everything with essential oils boils down to their chemical makeup. Essential oils have hundreds of different chemical constituents, and these various chemical constituents affect their therapeutic action. In other words, if an essential oil is, if it will help us with a certain therapeutic action that we need with handling stress or trauma, it is because of what it's made of, which is the individual chemical constituents. And so depending on a chemical constituent or many chemical constituents together, that is what's going to give it the ability to regulate our central nervous system and to modulate or stimulate or sedate our body. And these adaptogenic essential oils are taken from adaptogenic herbs. And here's a few of them. So if you want to bring some of them, into your life and use them during times of stress, we have oils like lavender and angustifolia, neroli, geranium, clary sage. And then you can always rely on your pines, spruces, and firs, which are wonderful adaptogens for support with adrenal fatigue during times of stress, during times of trauma, and making, blends with, these oils together, because blends are always more effective than a single oil by themselves. And so you may want to do different things. I mean, if you want to affect your psyche, the quickest way to affect your psyche is through inhalation. And so you might want to diffuse something. I like to put oils on my body, diluted properly, of course. And that way I like to put it like on my occiput or the back of my neck or the top of my shoulders. That way I can inhale them, but they also are absorbed through my integumentary system. I really prefer that. But the quickest way to affect your psyche during times of stress and trauma is through inhalation. So diffusing would be good, whether it's in a diffuser or a cotton ball or an aroma stick, or applying it on your body close to your nose so that you can smell your blend of choice. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just some of the common ones that most people have heard of, that, you know, you can jot down really fast and then try a few different combinations of aromas to see what you like and that you want to apply. You might want to bring them into your life by making a daily massage or body oil, or bathing with essential oils are a tremendous way to relieve stress, especially if you have, you know, magnesium and Himalayan salt and, you know, your carrier oil in the bathtub. And if you're really, really good, you're going to also have a solubilizer in there, so that the essential oils are evenly dispersed. Because what happens if you don't and you get into the bath, what can happen is that essential oils are lipophilic. They love fat. We all have fat in our body, and as soon as we get into the tub, they will go straight to our fat. And so you may or may not experience a negative side effect called sensitization, where maybe the next day you experience a rash, depending on the oil that you used, how much you put in, you know, how long you're in the bath. There's a lot of factors, but again, using oils in the bath, I just want to preface with you should have a carrier, and consider also using a solubilizer like Polysorbate 80. It's cheap. You can get off Amazon. Just put a little bit into the blend. I like to put my salts and my magnesium in a bowl, and then I put my essential oil blend in there and put that in the bath, and then I add the solubilizer to it. If you want to add the solubilizer into the bowl as well before you put it in, you can do that. But anyways, again, that just disperses it evenly into the water, and that's going to only increase your therapeutic effect. Anyways, so those are just different ways that you can bring essential oil applications into your life for those that are adaptogenic. You can apply them directly to your adrenals. That will help. And again, or on your neck, occiput, and shoulder, but keep them where you can smell them. And essential oils are very volatile. They dissipate very quickly, so you may have to reapply every hour and a half or so during really heavy times of stress and trauma. Again, adaptogenic essential oils come from distilling adaptogenic herbs. So let's move on and talk a little bit about adaptogenic herbs. Here's a list of some of adaptogenic herbs. Now, just like essential oils, adaptogenic herbs are taken best in combination than a singular herb. Now, there's 11 mentioned here, but that doesn't mean they're all right for you. And a lot of them, it's great if you want to take them as capsules. What I want to encourage you to do is meet with get a professional consultation with a phytotherapist, an aromatherapist, or a certified herbalist or registered herbalist to see which one of these is matched to you, or add them to your diet. For example, I put maca in my shake or in my morning coffee. My morning coffee that I use is an adaptogenic coffee, so I get a lot of these herbs it's like a morning herbal coffee. So instead of taking capsules, again, I like to minimize how many capsules and things I'm taking. You can add it to a shake, you can add it to a smoothie, you can add it to your coffee, and then that way you don't have to actually be taking them as a capsule. You have to find ways to add these things into your diet, different herbs and spices that act as adaptogens, so that you don't feel like you're taking, hundreds of, pills every day, and that will make your self-care routine much easier. The cautions with with herbal adaptogens, again, because just like essential oils, just because it's so natural does not mean there's no safety, there's no contraindications, because there are. You have to educate yourself, and there's so much misinformation on the web when it comes to essential oils and herbs that you have to reach out to someone who's trained. I will never for the life of me figure out why people get on Facebook groups and ask questions about their health and then take advice from people, and you don't even know who they are or their training or anything about it. They have no credibility, but yet you're taking advice from them. If you are worth having good advice, it's worth paying a small fee to get professional help if you really care. Facebook groups are great for a lot of things, but if you're serious about helping yourself, you need to make sure the person you're talking to is credible before you just take advice. Just like my friend who's like, oh, the rash on her chest after I had my baby, somebody telling her, oh, put lanolin. Oh my God, do you really want to put an animal product on your chest when your body is breaking down, having, an adaptogenic challenge, and you want to add a cream on it that has animal hormones that's only going to disrupt your hormones even more? Was that person, well-meaning? Of course they were. But do they know what they are talking about? Of course they don't. And did that person know? No, because she doesn't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So you just need to be careful. Okay, so some of these cautions with herbal adaptogens are, you need to find out which ones are best for you. Okay, and you need to make sure that there's no safety and contraindications, like if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, on certain medications, or have certain allergies. And you need to start slow and increase the dose. And again, by all means, see a certified or registered herbalist or phytotherapist when choosing adaptogens. They're powerful medicine. I don't know why that slide is there, sorry. Oh, I guess we're at the end of our webinar. If you want to know more about phytotherapy, working with essential oils, working with herbs, January 18th is the first day to our next live streaming 240-hour professional certification program. Live streaming means, I think most people know now, but it means that we meet in real time on a weekly basis. And if you can't meet on that same time every week, our courses are recorded so you can watch them at your convenience. So it's really impossible to miss anything, which is really nice. We have a private learning library for students only. We have a very active instructor-led community. So there is a lot of refining in this student community group, where you are getting a lot of information in your live streaming course, and then you're putting these things into action in the student group, and then myself and other instructors are going in and saying, you need to refine this, you need to change this. There's a lot of learning going on in a very active student group. And so you have support, you have accountability, you have immediate clarification. There's nothing more frustrating going months thinking you know how to do something only to find out that you were doing it wrong because you had no one to ask or clarify, because you're learning in one dimension, maybe on a traditional online program by yourself, just clicking through information, but not getting feedback, not hearing from students all over the world, not hearing the questions that they ask, not having a very active student group where you're getting immediate clarification and refinement to techniques that you are putting into practice. So It's very, very helpful. It's a unique learning setting, and it's proven to be very effective. You could see that from the various testimonials on the site. And there's tons of things you can do. You can have your own practice. You could add the things you learn to an existing business. Like I have a lot of people who own spas, or they're massage therapists, or they're acupuncturists, or other alternative therapies. A lot of people are trying to support a business, but if you do not have the knowledge, you cannot grow a business in this manner. And so it's important to make sure you're getting accurate information. So our times that we meet are Wednesday evenings at 5:30 p.m. Again, everything is recorded, and this is not a mock. It's not a mass online certification program. This is small classroom sizes that we have, and I like to work with small groups of people at a time. Basically, you log in each week or you watch the video, and then you go make application in the student group, and there's a lot of refinement in that group. If you want to take a look at some of the core curriculum, I encourage you to log on and take a look at the homepage and the courses page, because this class is pretty intense and you get a very broad scope of knowledge. Various forms of application, anatomy and physiology. You learn to formulate a lot of different body products. You learn to emulsify. You learn how to create your own lotions, creams, butters, and bases, as well as other therapeutic applications. You learn how to formulate yourself. It's very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. And we also help you with launching your own brand. We talk a lot about launching a business and creating income if that is something that you're interested in. Of course, that's no guarantee, but what is a guarantee is that you're going to have the support to help you reach that goal if that is what you're looking for. So may the next few months be a period of magnificent transformation. I hope that you are all ready to plan ahead and work on practicing self-care and experience much improvement in your health in 2018 in the next year to come. So thank you so much for your time, for joining us tonight on the webinar. If you have any questions, you can log on and email us at info@AuthenticAromatherapyEducation.com. I make sure that I get back to all of my inquiries. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in class.